Good afternoon, everyone. A few words about this tool that was created about 40 years ago to protect shores, seashores and lake shores. Here is a very simple map of the shallow lake, and so we have 3 lakes in the northeast part of France, so the reservoir lakes that we mentioned before. Here are the shapes of lakes that we see. So in red you can see, well, with the red arrow you can see the shallow lakes. So the Aquitaine Lake, the Maison Lake on the left, and the Grand-Lieu Lake, bottom right, le lac de Grand-Lieu. A few pictures to show you what this flat land look like. Lac de Grand-Lieu, lac d'Aquitaine. So what are our missions of the conservatory? It was created by state representatives. It was funded by a specific tax on motorboats. What makes us special is to acquire land, to become owners of lands, to be able to protect them definitely. The point of conservatory, it's not to manage land, but to buy those lands, to become the single owner and to restore them, to open them to the public. Because very often we have lands that are closed, that are dumps, and the point for us is to open them to the public, and our mission is a key one, especially on the major Orbs Lake, like in the Lac Léman. And we also help the managers elaborating management plans, tools, roadmaps to drive their actions. We are mediators in some way that try to connect all the different stakeholders, and for that Grand-Lieu is a very interesting example. We have a little bit under 20 great lakes, over 1,000 hectares. So the low limit was 1,000 hectares. So today we have less than 4,000 hectares acquired. Well, 7,000 including Grand-Lieu, and in France it's over 190,000. So the numbers we can see here are no longer up to date. We can work on the border cities and villages. So cities and towns that are the border of lakes, as long as we have a continuity in terms of hydrology, landscape, on wetlands, for example. On wetlands we can go even beyond the bordering town. So we are a public organization that is organized in a quite original way by high civil servants, but also representatives. So half of the board is made of local and national representatives from shore council, let's say, who have huge power in the policy of the conservatory. They're going to drive it. We have people here who know very well what these shore councils are, and that we're able to validate the intervention areas of the conservatory. It means that we are really at the corner of the policies for local development of territories. We have a scientists' council that was changed recently, For example, it works on, for example, climate changes, how to work on strategic withdrawal, for example. And we have offices in Rochefort and one in Paris, and delegations of shore councils everywhere in the French territories. And there is one for lakes in Savoie. So it's a quite original organization that was copied for the best, like in the Mediterranean. It is a functioning, it works very well. There are not a lot of hierarchy levels, like 3 or 4 levels, but it's way under the regular type of organization, public organization. We don't have a lot of means if we compare what we do compared to large cities, for example. We have under 200 people working, 900, close to 1,000 actually agents who are literal keepers, let's say, who are employed by the management associations, organisms, like the Forest National Office or different kind of organism. We are not their employers, but we have an impact on their job, what they do. And we focus our actions and their actions. We work on helping them with maintenance, for example. The budget is around 50 million euros, 38 related to this tax on motorboats, as I said before, and then subsidies, European funds on specific projects. So these are not subsidies that we get all the time, but based on projects. We have a simplified scheme. This is what we do. So we have to set up an intervention strategy on the long run. So we look at criteria, biothreats, for instance, or how we can protect inventories and the places. And then we define scopes of action. We focus our efforts to optimize the way we work. So we have the Shore Council again, the board council. And once the board validated this strategy, then we go and talk to landowners to acquire before we put the lands into management. It can take time. It can take 12 years or 20 years. What are our means? Well, we have our budget to buy the lands. So about 50 million euros. Acquisition is mostly amicable arrangement, so preemption or by strict acquisition. So for 75% of acquisitions are done through an amicable arrangement. So we have a preemptive right that is given by the département, French departments, and we have it not mostly for the lakes, but mostly for the shore, the seashore. It enables us to look at what happens and handpick the areas we want, the lands we want. We try not to buy lands where there are buildings on it because they are too expensive. It's not our duty. No, we don't have any direct managing tools. So then we sign contracts with associations or territories to find use to these territories. Sometimes we have to buy the construction on the land because we have one house in 300 hectares, for instance. We can also create our own preemptive areas. It's something that we have been able to do since 2002. So own preemptive areas, as we call them. And the state gives us a lot of military lands, military domains, public domain, private domain from the states. And then we have donations and legacy. We are committed to buy lands. We have objectives set by the Ministry of Environment that guarantees the means we have. Today we are close to 200,000 hectares with a ramping up in the past 15 years. We are a general organism institution, so we set up objectives to be able to protect a third of the shore. Like we say the third, but it's not a third, it's a theoretical third. It's an ethical third to connect all the natural sites, to be able to create some kind of a chain. When you look at the conservatory sites on the Atlantic coast, you can see when you look at the map, you can see all the different key chains, and they are really creating dots around the seashore in the Atlantic. And these places are valuation places. Having a conservatory site for a territory, it's not a problem for a city or a town. It's actually a good way to attract people, tourism. When we build something for tourism, we try to make it light, to keep it light, to make it not permanent. This is very general things about the conservatory. So we want to act together with other public institutions. We have territories, we have National Office of Forests, private forests, we have regions as well that have activities. So we try to build synergies and to work together. We work for the same common good. We don't want to prevent them from working. So we have different ways of acting to make sure that protecting the environment is active and to make it an asset and a tool in development. The biggest challenge is to look at climate changes in the society that needs shores. So it is important for territories to have shores, to open those shores in their local contexts. We have different type of cases. In the Alps, it's true that we have access challenges with a very ancient urbanization near the lakes. Today we are looking at balconies, so as in the pictures you can see here, you can have constructions, buildings that have a great overview of the lake. In the south of France, we are going to try and anticipate on the growing pressures that we see appearing in the Mediterranean shore being saturated in terms of buildings. So we see the Saint-Pinson, Sainte-Croix-du-Verdon lakes are starting to find it difficult to manage the tourism with huge crowds coming. So we try to buy lands, not to withdraw them from the hands of the public, but to organize it better and to protect these great landscapes. We want to make sure that the buildings are made not directly on the shore, but behind, even if there is no erosion constraints, which is the case in the classical seashores. In shallow lakes, we have lands around it that belong to territories, and so we are focusing on the back territories, not on the shores, that are welcoming areas, feeding areas, restaurants for birds, for instance, so surrounding wetlands. And we also want to transmit the memory of sites, so the footprint of previous generations that built small walls, dry walls, and we want to make sure that we keep all of that because it's something that needs to be protected and valued. The point being to keep an image of the work these people did years ago, and to try and adapt to the natural constraints of this place. Here in the Forêt d'Orient Lake, in blue you can see what was bought already, what was acquired. It's almost up to date. And in orange you can see what we want to buy on the long term. So the idea now is to try and convince the actual owners, the current owners, to make them like our values, to share our values. And it's not always the case, so we want to create our own preemptive area, to have the legal tools, the planning tools, to be able to match these objectives that we set ourselves, to help the cities and local territories to work in there. So it is in yellow you can see the areas that are under monitoring, let's say. So we are not going to buy anything there, but we are keeping it. We are keeping an eye on it. All of that is done together with the local territories, local representatives, to work with them to make sure that they are working with us. A few figures, just to conclude. So global investments for the large lake, it's a few million euros. In 2016, it was mostly focused on acquisitions. So there is a big third of them that a third of the budget was allocated to works, so trails around the lakes, setting up dumps, building some light buildings, light constructions. You can see at the surface in 2016 we bought mostly in the eastern part of France, in Forêt d'Orient, and also in the center of France, and in the Alps. So it's the Rhone Mediterranean area. It's quite weak. We didn't have a lot of opportunities there, so it is important to do land prospection, to get in touch with the landowners. And this graph changes every year. It looks different every year. Here is the balance of acquisition per lake. We can see that the Lake du Verdon is doing very well. In the east, we can see that we have over 500 hectares, almost 600 hectares. It's quite important. So it took about 20 years to acquire these lands. We don't see Grand-Lieu. I'm not in charge of Grand-Lieu, and neither I'm in charge of the Aquitaine Lake, but we are close to 4,000 hectares. It's probably more than that. So again, acquisitions. Here it's the Lac du Der. In the eastern part of France, we are not going to buy everywhere. There are a lot of lands. We work together with the territories, with the forest authorities. It's what you can see in yellow here. This yellow area are places that we are interested in. That's the Forêt d'Orient Lake. And we can see this yellow acquisition, this yellow part representing the acquisition that we did over 500 hectares. It was acquired, and we had to take time, but patience was important. And that's the Maison Lake. Here we have 4 surrounding lakes. We don't have nothing on the shore, direct shore. Only wetlands around the lake that are like small islands of lakes, ponds, surrounding lakes around the lake, and a few pictures that are everywhere in the Maison Grand-Lieu. Thank you very much to the director, head of the Maison Grand-Lieu, for hosting this exhibition, you can see the different pictures taken of the shallow lakes. You can see Grand-Lieu here at the top, Aquitaine lakes, with the Cantal lake, where you can see a very important tidal range. So, are there any questions in the room? No questions so far? Okay. Maybe one question? About the land strategy. So I'm interested in Champagne's lakes shores. Since we are losing wetlands and meadows, are there any projects to acquire farming lands, and are you planning on working on that? Unfortunately, no. Because the intervention areas that were defined with the territories are almost only in the forest, because the scopes, we wanted to expand it, especially on the Pinay side, on the different territories. We can see that there is a reluctance. We don't have 100% support to get out of the wood. Can you use your own preemptive right against the inhabitants' right? Theoretically, yes, we could, but it's not the case. And this own preemptive right was created together with the département and the town. So once it's set up, we need to get the town hall approval. We talk with town hall every time, even if we use our own preemptive right. We have never had the case where the town hall refused, but it could happen, yes. But legally, we do not have to do it this way. But the political consequences, impact would be very difficult to manage, because if we try to acquire lands without the support of territories, we will never be able to work smoothly. Why did you create this own preemptive right? Yes, then, because there was a period of time where the département created their own preemptive rights, and they didn't really want to create these areas. There is no, because in the land territories, people don't have the same culture of protecting the shores. So they tried to create this own right of protecting sensitive areas, saying that they could do without accepting this process. That's why we created this preemptive right. Just a quick question. Once the lands are acquired, do you have to pay taxes on the land? Yes, absolutely. We have to pay land taxes. And some town hall ask us for the money, because when we have a lot of land on the city hall, we have to pay them. But there are some legal schemes that could exonerate us from paying these land taxes. But again, politically, it wouldn't be smart. According to you, the land acquisition for the shore could help on the Great Lakes. So what are the challenges in order to reach a public acquisition of shores? So the challenges for inland Great Lakes in the Alps, for instance, it's to guarantee an access to the shore, to guarantee shore agriculture, shore farming in the Lac Léman. The only window where it's not built, we are buying it. I'm not going to tell you how much it costs, but it's a lot of money. So we have two important challenges here. Another one is to anticipate on the Mediterranean lakes, on the coming changes, because in the Alps it's too late. Well, we're doing whatever we can, but we're going to step back. We're 150 years late. But in the southeast of France, there is a way for us to be able to work with the territories, to work on planning, having areas that are protected and areas that could be built. And what's more, there is another stake in the center of France, so without a lot of pressure, but protecting these large ecological areas coming from the upstream Dordogne down to the Gironde area to try and avoid fragmenting spaces and areas. And we can see places like Bord-les-Orgues or Vassivière that are not very famous, that are under pressure from timber, and it's destroying the landscape. And today the people's representatives say that it seemed that nothing could ever happen in those places, but with the new renewable energies policies, then we can see that it has an impact on the lands, and without land planning, it has an impact. I'm not saying that what we do are going to save rural areas with little finances, but the way we do is important when you have several cities working together, and we have we have the same targets, same objectives. For a seashore, it's a bit different, but when we hear the will to reduce our power, it's a signal. We have to look into it in different regions in France to try and protect the shores, and people and local territories are more important than national ones.